Now, here's the one thing that I've noticed missing from anti-communist rhetoric, and it's a little bit disappointing. At least, I haven't seen these arguments being made, and so correct me if I'm wrong, but most people do not point out the fact that Karl Marx lived in a different time period. And he noticed and he critiqued the time period that he lived in, which is significantly different than the time period that we live in now. And so Karl Marx lived in the year 1800. We do not structure our society according to the year 1800. Everything we do now is different. And so for those of you who don't know, the Industrial Revolution, it created many factories and it displaced a lot of people from their land. For example, in England, the King of England said that pastures and a couple of areas that farmers used in order to feed their animals were now part of the king's property, and the farmers couldn't use those. And so without animals, you don't have fertilizer. Without fertilizer, you don't have agriculture. And it displaced a huge chunk of the population towards cities. And this was done specifically because factory owners were bribing the king so that they can get cheap labor. Now, I don't know how many people are aware, but living in a factory was abysmal. Like, I probably would prefer going to war than to work in a factory during those times. Now, people don't understand, but the workday was around 14 to 16 hours. The work was repetitive and incredibly soul-crushing, and you were also not allowed to talk with other people. So imagine you're pulling a lever, the same thing, over and over and over. And you're doing this for 12 or 14 hours a day inside a building with loud noises from machinery. And usually what happened is within 3 years, most people would develop an injury. Now, children were also hired and they were told to go under the machinery in order to clean it. Sometimes the machine was still operational when children did it. Adults would also operate heavy equipment, and the moment they got an injury, like, that's it. There was no pension plan, there was nothing. They were discarded so that new people came in. And it was a very crushing lifestyle. And those are the working class that Karl Marx is talking about. And Karl Marx was thinking that the more capitalism is going to develop, the more factories, the more soul crushing, and eventually you get to the late stage capitalism where the system collapses. But that didn't happen. What happened instead was that the 8-hour workday was enacted. Now, many people would think that, this was a moral concern, or that the workers fought to get the 8-hour work period. But that's not really what happened. What happened is that the factory owners, they realized that the machine is the thing that has to run 24 hours. The manpower can actually be switched, and you can have different shifts. And they also noticed that forcing workers to only be available 8 hours a day increased productivity. Most of the mistakes and the errors that humans did were after those 8 hours. And so the more a worker worked, the less quality he produced. And by having 2 shifts, all of a sudden you can increase production, you get less defective goods, and at the same time you increase the worker satisfaction. But here's something that many communists will not tell you. The workers really did not like this, because working 8 hours a day meant being paid less. And so workers actually rebelled when you had the 8-hour workday. Workers at the time genuinely enjoyed spending 14 hours a day working because they were paid more. But anyway, right, as you can notice, none of those things that happened then can be applied today. When we talk about the working class today, nobody works in such a system. Even left-wing governments have made significant efforts to improve worker conditions, to the point where we can't actually say we have capitalist societies anymore. America, which most people believe is the capitalist nation, does not call itself capitalist. Like, the American government officially, on paper and on records, call themselves a mixed economy. So we did have capitalism at some point, but like now today, most nations around the world are mixed economies. And when you talk about the working class, you would notice that you cannot talk about them as a group of people that have a spiritual consensus or they have the same lived experiences. Because back then, yes, like a worker in a farm in England probably had, a worker in a factory in England probably had the exact same lived experiences as another worker in a different factory in Germany. Because the job was repetitive, it was pretty much the same. And so you could say that, yes, like these workers understand each other. But today a working class can be a truck driver and it can also be a coder. Do you think they have the same lived experiences? Do you think they share the same knowledge of what it is like to be a working man? Absolutely not. The things that upset a truck driver can be something that makes the coder happy. Like, for example, the coders, most of them, they're for green energy, they're for the environment, which is causing the truck driver to have to pay additional fees and taxes. So they're not together. They don't form a union. And communists, I have noticed, like they're trying to expand what the proletariat means and expand what the working class means by constantly adding more people. And I even saw a communist saying that Emma Watson is working class because she doesn't own the means of production. And according to Karl Marx, you'd be correct. Yes, Emma Watson doesn't own the means of production. But like during the Karl Marx time, you wouldn't have an individual like Emma Watson, which is part of the working class, and she is renowned internationally, and she gets to have speeches in front of world leaders, and she has millions of dollars able to afford tiny mansions and shit. Like, the working class during Karl Marx simply couldn't do that. And Emma Watson isn't an exception. Like, there are a lot of content creators and other Hollywood actors that are of Emma Watson's level. Karl Marx never experienced them, so like, he would have probably created a different class for individuals like Emma Watson. And so you end up with posts on Reddit such as this, with communists getting disillusioned. And they need to vent because they're vibrating with anxiety. And I really love this expression. I want to steal it. Vibrating with anxiety. He identifies as a socialist. He reads theory, he supports unions, and believes in dismantling the capitalist structures. But lately he finds it harder and harder to advocate for people that hate him. The working class is steeped in toxic masculinity and reactionary anti-progressive attitudes. Well, this is also because modern communism has like a lot of shit added later on from the academia, like, modern feminist theory and third wave feminism. And, like Karl Marx himself, in my opinion, would have been steeped in toxic masculinity. Like, you could probably have a beer with Karl Marx and have a joke about grabbing her by the pussy, and also having a joke about, N-words and stuff like that, because Karl Marx was a man of his time period. And in 1800, none of this would be shocking to any type of lad. But anyway, I was the local cafe owner down the street from my apartment this morning trying to get some reading done before logging into my remote job. It was raining, so I had an umbrella. I also happened to carry a canvas bag from my university literature department. Two construction workers came in. They were incredibly loud, taking up way too much physical space and completely ignoring the unspoken social contract of quiet boarding spaces. I was already feeling a little bit overstimulated. How exactly does he think that the proletariat from Karl Marx's time was like? Like, do you think they were, intellectual scholars? What? As they walked past my table, one of them looked at my bag, then at my umbrella, and said entirely unprovoked, "Hey buddy, careful with that umbrella, don't want it getting caught on our purse." Sorry, on your purse. His buddy chuckled, and they just walked on to get their coffees. It was a joke, I guess, playful teasing, but it felt deeply coded in gender politics and fragile heteronormative. I didn't say anything because, frankly, they were twice my size, and I didn't want to escalate the situation with people who clearly don't understand basic boundaries. I just stared at my laptop and felt my face getting hot. Again, this actually goes to prove that both of these people consider themselves working class. Like the communist, he considers themselves to be part of the proletariat, but obviously, the construction workers also consider themselves to be part of the proletariat. Do you think they have much in common, though? Like, do you think they have the same lived experiences? Like, if you ask the construction workers, it's like, what would make a better society? Do you think they would have the same answer as the communists? The construction worker would probably say, how about you tax us less? You fucking assholes. Like, I have family to feed and you're stealing money away from my family to give it to other people that aren't even thankful for me. Meanwhile, the communists will say, we need to tax you more. We need to tax your boss more, right? Here's the thing that gets me. I spend my free time fighting for their healthcare. I vote for policies that would literally give them better wages and safer working conditions. Yeah, but like, again, would those same individuals want lower wages and more chance of getting employed? Because I, for once, would. Like, if you ask me, you know, what do I prefer? High wage and low chance of employment versus low wage and really high chance of employment. I would get for the low wage because my son is going to need a job as well. And if I happen to lose my job, I want to go another place. And so if I have to pick, you know, like, do I want higher wages? No. No, and you know what? I don't want healthcare either. Like, tax me less. Don't tax me for the healthcare. I will get my own insurance. I will get my own arrangements, right? And so you see that the communist never actually talks with what the working class wants and just assumes that this is what they want. It's not. Like, most working class people hate getting taxed. How are we supposed to build solidarity with people who actively despise our values? Well, yeah, but see, the problem is you get legitimacy from them. You don't build solidarity. Your movement exists because of them. And you have disconnected yourself from them. You don't care about them, and you pretend you do. And so when it becomes obvious, you get this contradiction. But like, don't worry, you don't need them, right? Like, communists don't actually need the working class. You need the NGOs, you need the HR women, you need the politicians, and your movement is doing fine. Let me know what you guys think, though, and as usual, we'll see each other in the comment section. Take care.